Hi, folks. Welcome to this is podcast 40. I can't believe it's gone so quickly. And today we are talking about how Stiles Property Management found over 400K in hidden savings. This is the first live podcast we've done. So welcome. Glad to have you here. The advantage of that is we can make it a little bit interactive. So if you have some questions, then you can put them in the chat, whether you're on LinkedIn or YouTube. So, as I said, this is about Stiles Property Management. So, without further ado, let's introduce the guest today. So, first of all, I want to say hi to Devon Newton from Stiles Property Management. How are you doing,
Hi,
Devon?
everyone. Good. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
You are very welcome. And of course, my co-host for today, Rob Murkison from Intelligent Buildings. How
Hey
are you, Rob?
folks, glad to have you here. Doing good. Looking forward to talking about how we save money in commercial real estate.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Well, let's get straight into it. Of course, like we wanna discuss this topic. We wanna talk about not just the hidden savings, but obviously the return on investment of technology is super important. Devon, tell us about where you started with this. What was the project you were working on, and what kind of problem did you have with your building?
Great. Yes. Thanks for that question. So, Stiles Property Management is a Florida-based company. We have over 23 million square feet of property that we manage throughout the Sun Belt, primarily in Florida and the Carolinas. But at 110 East, which is the project we're specifically talking about today, this is a new Class A development that our building built with Shorenstein, and it's located right on the light rail in South End. And as the VP of Property Management, I was involved from the very beginning with the development side, all the way through to operations. So I really got to see firsthand how decisions in design impact the long-term performance of the asset. And I would tell you that from day one of the biggest challenges that I personally had was with all of the digital infrastructure terminology. It was quite overwhelming, to say the least. Everyone was throwing out all these acronyms and words that I had never heard before, and I realized that I needed somebody to help translate that. So when the tenants started moving in, uh, it sounded like we knew what we were talking about and what all these weird acronyms meant and how that would impact the tenants. So when I hired Rob at Intelligent Buildings, it was really to bring order to the chaos, not to save money. But along the way, Rob's team uncovered hundreds of thousands of dollars, which sounds like a fake thing, right? Like, oh,
Mm.
really? Are you sure? Because that's a really big number, but
Hmm.
it's true. And that was a very unexpected and welcome benefit.
Okay, really nice introduction. Thanks very much. So let's dig into that, of course. And the journey there, you sort of talked about how you sort of part of this was about the understanding, right? Like understanding about smart buildings, but then along the way you were able to get more to this point of savings. So what was the kind of the first point where you realized something wasn't working the way that it should?
Like I said, I think the first part of that was the terminology and not really
Mm.
understanding what we were getting into, and that I needed a translator for all things tech in the
Mm.
building. The second was the integration and the accountability. So every vendor in the building had their own system, and this building did win an award in 2024 for the Most Intelligent Office Building Award. So there is a lot of technology in the building. And in my experience, I've managed a lot of older assets, which come with their own challenges and problems. And this was completely new and foreign, all this new technology.
Mm.
So every vendor had their own system. They design it, install it, and operate it in a silo. And when things go wrong, they point fingers. And so I told Rob, I need one throat to choke. I need one point of accountability that can sort of herd all the cats and get things that are broken fixed and make sure that they're operating the way that they're supposed to. And that's really where intelligent buildings our journey began with them.
Hmm.
And if I can jump in, Jim.
Please do.
The unique thing about Devon and Styles as a whole is that they embraced the digital infrastructure, versus looking at that as something that was, you know, more of a nuisance. And what when we talk about $400,000 in savings, the only way that is achieved, and we can go into some of that detail,
Hmm.
but that is achieved is when the development team and the operations team are on the same page as far as looking, for opportunities for the tech to help versus hinder. And we can go into more of that detail, but that's where the magic happens. I mean, humbly I say, as an organization focused on CRE tech, we can guide and go point in the right direction, but ultimately it takes an owner and operator to realize those savings.
Right, exactly. They have to be a willing participant, of course, in all of this, right? They've got to have that vision, right? I mean, and what was I mean, Devon, you talked about how you started like early on in this project in the design phase. I mean, what was the early kind of vision for this building?
I think we wanted to bring the notoriety that we have in South Florida. Our corporate office is headquartered down there, and wanted to bring that style of Class A office. The term flight to quality is always thrown
Mm.
around. And so we wanted to bring that to the Charlotte market and find a way to differentiate ourselves um, in this market by implementing technology, but not only implementing technology for the convenience of the tenants, but also in hopes of reducing operating expenses by getting stuck in the trap of designing and developing and operating buildings the way that they've always been done, because that over time can become very expensive. But I think a lot of people hit the easy button because they've done it that way for so long, and technology can feel a little intimidating and overwhelming, especially when there's all these new terms that you don't know
Mm.
or understand and integrations that seem very complex. You have to really rely on the vendors and put a lot of trust and faith in them that they're not going to lead you down a wrong path or an expensive path. And that's really where intelligent buildings helped us so much.
Okay, they managed those relationships with the vendors, as you
Yeah, and they
said.
speak the language. It's like going to another country and not speaking that language. You might get sold a steak and you only wanted a hamburger. So, yeah, Intelligent Buildings speaks the language in all these different digital arenas, and was able to bring that information back to us, break it down in a very comprehensible way, and say, here's your decisions, here's a couple paths. We recommend this path. What do you want to do?
Okay, and maybe it's a question more for you, Rob. But like, what was the thing that you identified then first off, where it's like, okay, this is clearly a pain point. This is clearly an issue here where we can save money, or we can add value.
Well, with 110 East being a new development, the first identified savings came from the construction side, or the building of the building, right?
Okay.
And as everyone on this podcast listening, and Devin alluded to, there's a lot of different trades that are working together. Yet digital infrastructure, the digital nervous system, is a common thread, if you will, between these. And so our goal, the very first goal, is to simplify and coordinate with the vendors, and the design teams, to make sure that we could get rid of waste. So, quite simply put, that is converging onto a single digital infrastructure. And that is something that's been talked about for decades.
Mm.
But the reality of it is that, without going back to a visionary, enthusiastic, embracing owner and operator from a digital perspective, that's not what that's not what's possible. And so we were able to give some and give some examples where we were able to consolidate the infrastructure to for all the systems for say the distributed antenna system. And by but also by consolidating the infrastructure, it becomes a lot easier to secure that. And you also need there are situations when you're looking at this design where you can see the savings, but in order to achieve those savings, you need to have you need the vendors to cooperate. And again, that's
Mm.
where the owner, not the from the development team, they leaned in and said, yeah, this makes sense. We develop a trust with them, and then we build a trust with the vendor. And that becomes very important when you get to the operational side, because some of these same vendors that are putting in these systems are now the ones that are operating them as well. And we can go into the operational savings side in addition to that.
Yeah, let's do that. So you mentioned there digital antenna infrastructure.
Yep.
That was the thing that you identified fairly early on in the project.
Yep. And that was really, and Devin, maybe you want to add some color here. That was probably one of the first earlier wins, because when you're building a new building, digital antenna systems are typically siloed by themselves, and they're very important to the tenant experience, but often not considered in the whole digital infrastructure
Yeah.
conversation.
And they're also very expensive. So I think where Rob and his team brought a lot of value there was in reviewing the scope of work, which our team did a great job with. We thought we had a great number and a great product, and we did.
Mm.
But there was redundancies in the scope that we didn't really realize because we didn't speak the language. That Intelligent Buildings was able to identify and cut those out. And I love to use metaphors and simplify things. So when I picture what IB did with the DAS system, I picture it like going to a restaurant. I used to be a waitress a long time ago, and people would come in and they would order a baked potato. And you know that every topping adds like 50 cents on your baked potato. So sometimes you want a loaded potato and like you have all the money in the world, and other times you can just get by with butter. But that was sort of what was happening with our DAS. There was all these little extras that kept getting added onto it, and we're like, oh, do we really need these? Is it worth that kind of money? And
Mm.
as long as it didn't impact the tenant experience, like, do we really need to spend that money? And so IB was able to pull those items out, right size it, make sure that the scope was really meeting our needs and wasn't over scoped, and that ended up saving several thousand, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it was like 200 or more.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to jump in on the DAS system as well, just made me think of this, Devin. When you look at it in a totally siloed fashion, it needs to have connectivity back to the carriers. Well, there was already a 5 gig circuit running in the building that Stiles was already contracted to pay for. We were able to leverage that circuit and not have any ongoing connectivity cost. So there's additional savings opportunities by looking at all this holistically.
Mm.
And again, that's getting in, up front on a new construction. Imagine what's possible on existing buildings that have not that didn't have that upfront foresight.
Right. Well, that goes to the point about convergence there, right, Rob? Where you were able to use converged
Absolutely.
networks. Yeah, got it. Nice. Okay. So, I mean, a lot of that's about the design phase, sort of in the construction phase. Then, obviously, you saw the project through. We're into the kind of like more going live, if you will, right? The tenants in the building. You started to use it. We're in the operation phase. Then, what was that transition like?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I didn't really think that we would find any operational savings because this is a brand new building. Like,
Mm.
how can stuff possibly go wrong in a brand new building? And you know, surprise, there is drift and things go wrong. And it wasn't
Sure.
anything that the operational team did necessarily. But just as an example, this brand new beautiful equipment that we get from the factory comes with certain factory settings. So one of the things that Rob's team identified was our AC compressors were not auto cycling. So we have 4 compressors on each floor, and the first compressor happens to be the largest and consume the most amount of energy, and that was the only one that was running all the time. So literally a simple flip of a switch and a programming change that we were able to do in-house and cost us $0 to do is going to end up saving us roughly $14,000 annually in electrical consumption charges, not to mention avoiding the wear and tear on the equipment that would have incurred from just running all the runtime on that one compressor. So that's a really interesting thing to find, in my opinion, because
Yeah.
there were no alarm bells, there was no warnings, there was no like something is going wrong. There was nothing to indicate that there was a problem, and that's the kind of stuff that Rob's team has been able to pull in sensors and data points and to put this on a dashboard that our baseline BMS wasn't able to do so that we could identify issues before they become issues and before they become costs.
Yeah, Rob,
And if I could
go
just
for it.
jump in on that as well, Jim. The difference in how we look at things versus maybe where this industry gets stuck sometimes is we didn't just install some software and say here's a dashboard. Call us when you see something that's interesting. The
Yeah.
difference is that, and we believe that the industry is in big need for this. I mean, one of the quotes I always Devon saying early on is I don't understand the geek speak or something like that. I mean, you've referenced it, the concept earlier. So we believe that, and strongly believe that property management teams don't need to become CRE technology specialists. Instead, what they need is a technology enabled service. And the service may have some software and insights underneath it, and it's combined with embedded expertise. But that is what allows a property management team to get rapid ongoing value and lock in savings like she talked about with the compressor sequence.
Yeah,
How
you make
did?
a great point, and sorry, I'll just add on to that really
Yeah, go for it.
quickly. As far as the service goes, as property managers and our maintenance engineers, we know and have been trained on, the best ways to save money and what consumes the most electricity in a building, HVAC first, then lighting, and so on. So we had stagger starts on our AC units, but without the data pulled into the dashboard, that was really guesswork, right? So our AC systems were starting up 30-minute intervals. And when we finally were able to pull in our demand data, we were able to see, oh my gosh, we need 45-minute stagger starts. So that kind of stuff was really helpful and interesting. And what Rob's talking about as the service was there were certain programming changes that were more challenging, maybe not the stagger starts, but other things that they've identified. And we were kind of like, okay, we hear what you're saying and it makes sense, but we don't know what to do next. And like within seconds, they come back and be like, okay, here's what you need to do. Take this sheet of paper, go up to the room, look for this panel, push this button, or they'll just do it themselves if they have access to the dashboard. So it's not like they're dumping work on our plate. They're finding the problem and they're solving the problem, which is really helpful to a property management team.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rob, how did you guys actually identify that problem with the compressor?
Yeah, so it's a combination of first and foremost having visibility to the data. Once you have visibility to the data, over the past couple decades, we have developed a set of, if you will, algorithms to go look for certain situations. Um, and other situations, we have experts that have a bit of a hunch, and then unpack it and look for the example. And what the example Devin talked about, specifically the compressor sequencing, um, we through our algorithms, we're able to see. only one compressor was turning on, and then through the embedded expertise, you end up calling the manufacturer and said, what's the deal? Is this the way it's supposed to be designed? It should be doing something else. And
Right.
so that rolling up the sleeves of figuring out that those compressors should alternate allowed us to then go back to Styles and say, hey, we talked to the manufacturer. They said that you can make this change, and we don't know why it wasn't put that way to begin with, because it is
Yeah.
a small change, but it has impact. And that's how we went about finding that. I'll say that over time, the algorithms we've been able to develop, whether they're in our heads or put in particular pieces of software, that allows us to scan buildings faster and faster for those low-hanging fruits.
Mm.
Because it's important to understand that without real savings, we're not talking. It's a little bit of it's too hypey or fluffy or whatever you want to call it. The goal here is to get the real savings, get the trust of the owner and or operator, and then do it again and again, bring more and more savings over time. And that's how you build a long-term trusted relationship with the technology enabled service.
Right. Absolutely. So, Devon, looking, well, sort of talking about now and looking ahead a little bit, like, I mean, who owns the performance of the technology now? And how do you keep that? How do you keep up that kind of performance and stop it from slipping?
Yeah, it's a really great question. The performance of a building always goes back to the property manager, but the problem is that managers change jobs, tenants move in and out, they have build outs, construction, you have vendors in the building getting their hands into things. And that's when things start to slip or drift. So that's why having a company like Intelligent Buildings is so critically important for that continuity of operations and to ensure that you don't get that drift that can very easily happen inside of a building.
Got it.
And that happens with regular meetings, Jim. So
Okay.
so so there's a regular rhythm in which we are continually talking with the team and reviewing and tallying up the savings, so we can celebrate where we're the savings that we're achieving.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We have monthly meetings where they flag anomalies and we tell them what tenants are moving in and, hey, this
Oh,
new
okay.
programming
Yeah.
is going to take place in the BMS. And yes, we keep our finger on the pulse that way.
And what's the plan now? I mean, we've been talking about one building, but obviously you have a large portfolio. What are you planning now, like in terms of portfolio wide with technology? Tell us about that.
Yeah, this has been a really great experience with intelligent buildings. And, Rob alluded earlier to the fact that you find a little bit of savings and then you keep going.
Mm.
Um, and that's exactly what we're doing. So I mentioned before, I really didn't think we would find savings in our brand new, big, beautiful building, and we did. So we took it to another asset in Fort Lauderdale that they're working on as well, did the same sort of digital scan, found over $95,000 in estimated savings there. So we're implementing those changes. And I'm really excited because we just took over 5 new properties here in Charlotte that were built in the 80s and 90s. So I'm really excited to get their hands onto some older assets and
Yeah.
anticipate seeing really substantial savings at those buildings.
Interesting. Yes, absolutely. Tell us about that $95,000 of savings, and can you talk a little bit about where that was, how they found?
Yeah, Rob, do you want to handle that one? I
Sure,
know a
sure.
lot of
So
it was
so
like, yeah, the digital infrastructure, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, typically where we'll see in the three categories, and this is standard, is we'll see that the network, the cost of maintaining the network, whether the bandwidth is coming in or just the overall network itself, it is has built up over time. So about
Mm.
20,000 of those savings was just from in that bucket. The second bucket is in energy, and quite frankly, energy is the thing that is baselineable the most. So when we
Sure.
can go and see not only a production energy consumption, but in many parts of the United States, You also have demand charges, and you can see an opportunity to reduce the actual cost of a unit energy, the kWh. So we found about $57,000 in savings there. And then the last piece is in the labor category, just
Mm.
uh, reduction of either staff labor, which is harder to measure, but more importantly,
Quantify.
reduction in vendor labor, the vendor labor, right? Like less
Mm.
service calls.
Hmm.
So when we have that type of visibility, maybe the vendor doesn't need to come out, or maybe the vendor's more efficient when they perform their maintenance.
Yeah.
So those three categories: the IT network stuff, the energy, and then the labor component, and all that added up to about $95,000
Okay. So far.
so far.
I can give
Yeah.
a quick little example of that labor savings, not in financial terms, but in practicality. At this particular building, we have this beautiful sky lobby on the 11th floor where all the amenities are. And when it's sunny out, the AC temperature is comfortable, but on a cloudy day like today, it's cold. And we were always having to email or put in a work order to the building engineer to like raise the temperature on cloudy days. And I thought to myself, gosh, this is such a smart building. Why is this not figuring out that it's cloudy outside?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, yet another programming change needed to be implemented to solve that problem.
Yeah. Exactly. So we've got about 4 minutes left. If anyone does have a question, here's a question from Richard. Thanks very much. When finding a building issue, do you use IT and OT operation to figure out the main cause of the issue?
If that's
Take
directed
that.
at me, I call my one throat to choke and I put in a work order with Intelligent Buildings and they figure out everything from there because sometimes it is IT and OT. And before Intelligent Buildings, I love our IT department, but they would be like, no, that's an
Yeah.
operational technology. That has nothing to do with us. And then we're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to solve this problem. So now I just call Intelligent Buildings and they figure it out.
Okay.
It's
It's a
all
combination.
OTIT. It's all CR. Yeah, it's CRE tech. The difference is, and Devin and I were joking about this last week, is that there's a lot of tech in a building, but you replace your smartphone or your iPhone once or every 2 or 3 years.
Hmm.
The tech that goes in a building, you replace every 15 or 20 years
Yeah.
in a lot of cases. So that the difference in those life cycle of the OT versus the IT is where you're getting the true savings. And if you can maintain that visibility into that data of the existing technology, I want to sort of make sure we get this point across because I know we're almost out of time. Everything we're talking about is not adding a new widget. This is
Hmm.
using the existing technology in a new building or a 20-year-old building and getting the most out of that technology. This is not about buying something new. This is getting the most out of what you already have.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point. Okay, Devon, we got a bit of time, so no rush. What advice would you give a peer thinking about a similar journey?
I would say don't let the jargon scare you. That was my greatest takeaway. I think you have to be comfortable looking a little uninformed at times in order to make intelligent decisions.
Mm.
That's really why your partners are there and why you hire experts. You know, nobody thinks they're an idiot because they need to hire an attorney. It's a totally different field and outside your scope, and so don't let that scare you. And then don't feel like you have to bite, off the whole elephant. You can chew that thing up bit by bit, and that's what we've done. It's been incremental and start small, prove the value, and then expand on there.
Got it. Rob, anything to add?
I think Devin, the elephant analogy is one that I use often. You can't, you got to take lots of bites. You can't take one big bite. I think the other thing that I would add, in addition to the existing technology, is to emphasize Devin's point, is that you can start small. You got to get the trust between the vendors, the property management team, the owners, or whoever's going to play our role from a technology-enabled services, and that they all got to be on the same page. And without that trust, it comes across as a different type of agenda. And we have one agenda, and that's to reduce the operating cost in the building and delight the tenants.
Hmm. Excellent point, and also a good point to end because we're sort of out of time here. If you do have questions, you can still leave them on the chat. So please do. I'll be checking those. I'm sure Rob will come in, and Devon, if you want specifically to get some answers from them. So just remains me to say thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed this. We're going to be doing this again. Like, we think this is a really interesting thing, to explore about ROI in smart buildings. So we're going to be inviting more people onto this podcast, getting them to tell their story, how they achieved savings and how they did it. And we want to share these kind of use cases. So thank you, Devon, for sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Rob, for your time. And we'll be back shortly with another podcast and more interesting stories about applications of technology and return on investment. Thanks, guys.
Thanks again.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye for now.